the National Bible Quiz 2021 lessons on Introducing Jesus. We're now at Lesson 2. Who is Jesus? Jesus' authority over people and authority to teach. Before we dive in, let's have a recap on the previous lesson, which was taken from Mark chapter 1 verses 1 to 11. Discuss these following questions to refresh your memory. What is the meaning of the word gospel? And what is this message about? And secondly, who is Jesus? Alright, I hope you all are refreshed and ready to dive into this week's lesson. Before we get started, I want you to think about your favorite superhero and what powers he or she has. Share about them with your peers and your officers. Alright, I hope you had fun talking about your favorite superheroes. Now, let's look into today's passage, which is taken from Mark chapter 1 verses 16 to 22. Jesus calls the first disciples. Passing alongside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on a little farther, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, who were in their boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father, Zebedee, in the boat with the hired servants and followed him. Jesus heals a man with an unclean spirit. And they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority and not as the scribes. Alright, now we're going to look into some questions based on the passage that we just read. Again, take some time to pause the video in between questions to discuss the questions further. Question 1. Who did Jesus meet as he passed along the Sea of Galilee? And what did they work as? Alright, so that was a fairly easy question. Jesus met Simon, Andrew, James, and John, who worked as fishermen. Question 2. What did Jesus ask them to do? Now, if you refer to verses 17 and 20, he called them and asked them to follow him. Our next question is, how did they respond? And what does this show us? Looking at verses 18 and 19, they left their nets and followed him. This shows us that Jesus has power over people. Now our last question is, what did Jesus do in the synagogue in Capernaum? What was the difference in the way Jesus did this? Now if you look at verses 21 and 22, he was teaching the people in the synagogue, and he taught with authority, unlike the scribes who are religious teachers. Let's think about the passage that we just read. We often have people in our lives who have authority over us, be it our parents, our teachers, older siblings, the government, all these people. And we often view being under someone's authority as a negative thing, as we think we might get bossed around and asked to do things we don't want to do. Or sometimes we're told not to do the things that we actually want to do. However, it is good to have authorities placed over us to safeguard and care for us. The sad truth is, human authorities are imperfect and therefore do not act rightly all the time, and we suffer the consequences. But the difference with having Jesus as the ultimate one who holds the authority over our lives is that He is perfect and will always act rightly. We can entrust our lives entirely under His care and His kingship. That goes the same to listening to the words of those who have authority over us in our lives. Whilst human authorities may falter and make mistakes, Jesus' word is perfect, and we should therefore hold it with the highest regard. His word is indeed a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path, as is said in Psalm 119, verse 105. Now, as you think about this, I want you to look at two questions. First, think of the different people who have authority over your life. What does this mean? And how do you feel about them? And secondly, how is Jesus' authority over your life different from theirs? Now, let's dig even deeper. Let's go back to Mark chapter 1, verses 21 and 22. In Jesus' time, the scribes, who are Jewish religious teachers, always taught in the synagogue, which is a Jewish meeting place. They taught by quoting the names of another religious teacher whom they had previously learned under. However, Jesus taught in His own name and authority, as He is God Himself. This made Jesus' teaching very different from that of the other religious teachers of His time. Isn't that amazing? Imagine sitting at the feet of God Himself and learning from Him. In a way, it is possible for God to speak to us even today. Whenever we open up the Bible and read it, God speaks to us and teaches us with power and authority. Now, I want you to look at these questions, pause the video and spend some time discussing them with your peers, and even with your officers if you feel the need to do so. How was Jesus' teaching different from that of the scribes, who are Jewish religious leaders, in Mark chapter 1, verses 21 to 22? What does it mean for Jesus to teach with authority? I hope you had a good discussion, and that's all for this lesson. Now, before you go off on your own ways, spend some time responding to God's word in prayer, and you may like to pray along some of these points. Ask God for wisdom and understanding when you read the Bible, and pray for a heart that desires to follow Jesus and live under His authority as King.